Just cut to the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes takes place several generations in the future following Caesar's reign, where apes are now the dominant species and live harmoniously while humans have been reduced to living in the shadows. As a new tyrannical ape leader builds his empire, one young ape undertakes a harrowing journey that will cause him to question all that he has known about the past and makes choices that will define the future for apes and humans alike. I would say we're getting pretty into blockbuster season now, and Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes was one of my most anticipated movies coming into 2024. The last three Planet of the Apes movies, that entire trilogy following Caesar, was such a joy to watch. It's truly one of my favorite trilogies, honestly, of all time. I really, really, really like all three of those movies. I like War for Planet of the Apes a lot more than most people do. So I was really excited to see this movie because these monkey movies are just amazing. I just love the visual effects in them. I just love the world. I love the world building, and all the themes that God explored in the last trilogy were just so well done. It's hard for me not to get excited for these movies, and I was left pretty disappointed by this one, not because it wasn't connected to the last trilogy. There's just so many scenes in this movie that on your drive home or even while you're in the theater, you're just kind of sitting there going, why? But before I get into a lot of those issues with the movie, the visual effects in this movie are insane. It's some of the best visual effects. Noah is a really strong, solid character to build up your next possible trilogy around, because they definitely set up that this movie could continue into another trilogy. I think that they did a really good job setting his character up. The action sequences are fun. You're never not entertained by this movie. There's really cool themes about how Caesar is viewed 300 years in the future, and you see his messages and his words get misconstrued and get lost in translation. And that's a really interesting theme and aspect of this movie. Getting into my issues with the movie now, there's going to be a lot of these. My biggest issue is Freya Allen's performance as Nova isn't believable at all. I just cannot buy that there's a character that has lived underground their entire life, because again, this takes place 300 years after the collapse of human civilization. So she has no experience, no recollection, no actual perception of what our reality is like. She has no idea what it's like whatsoever. But when she's in the world now, she acts like she owns everything, like she's entitled to everything, like she's straight out of our time. I cannot believe that somebody that has lived underground in a society for 300 years.
As I'm editing this, I'd like to note that it is also completely unbelievable that a human civilization would be able to live underground for 300 years.
And has the same fundamental flaws that humans have now, in the sense of entitlement, the sense of ownership. I just don't believe her performance, and I don't know how much of it really is on her performance. I think that a lot of it is due to the writing as well. It just did not work for me whatsoever. I think that her believability just as a character wasn't portrayed that well. I just can't believe any of the actions that she makes, and her character just does not work for me. I think that part of that's because of the performance, and I think that the large majority of that is because of the writing. Now, besides that, my biggest issues with this movie really fall in the third act, where every single scene I'm just kind of questioning why or how did that happen. We have this one human character who it's established that he has these broken ankles, and he's in this one room that's guarded by this massive gorilla, and whenever the characters are on this bridge at nighttime doing things, I won't get into too many spoilers, but bear warning, minor spoilers throughout the rest of this, but they're on this bridge doing something, and he's up really high on this boat, which is basically where Proximus Caesar lives, and this human character is up there as well, and it's well established that there's this gorilla guarding the door, and that he broke his ankles, and that he wasn't able to get across the sea for whatever reason he was trying to get across sea. And then he just shows up on this bridge out of nowhere. It's also taken place that they're doing this stuff on the bridge at nighttime, and there are no other apes awake besides these guys. They're not getting caught by anybody else. I just don't believe that there's not going to be apes that would see them or be on guard or watch them doing what they're doing. It just doesn't make sense to not have apes out there for them to just dilly-dally and be completely fine with nobody else besides one human character who is well established, heavily guarded, be able to easily find them.
For your tyrannical monkey leader to not have anybody on guard at nighttime doesn't make sense.
And then once they're in this vault, which is the main part of this movie, is them trying to get into this massive vault that has been there for 300 years. Let's establish this right now. This vault has been there, left abandoned for 300 years. That is how long this vault has been there. And then once they get into the vault, she flips on a power, just one switch, just flips on a power switch, and all the generators are fine, all the generators are working. It's just really silly. And it's not like they really even needed to turn on the power because they kept holding up the torches. It was just a completely useless scene, and it didn't make sense at all either.
Last time I'm doing this, I swear. But there's a scene in this movie where the apes are hunting humans, but there's really no reason why. We never see any of these humans again, and Nova gets caught up in the middle of it, but there's no explanation for why the apes are hunting humans. They never show up again. It's really just a nod to the original Planet of the Apes movie, and it has no place in this movie whatsoever.
Then at one point in the movie, during the third act, this vault starts to flood, and you see how big this vault is. You see how big the main room of it all is. And then once you see it start flooding, it's just another part where it's like, that wouldn't happen. It wouldn't flood like that. You see how massive the opening room is, and you see all these aspects and where and the vault is and how it's laid out, and you're just left really clueless as to how these parts of the vault are flooding, because again, it just doesn't make any logistical sense. And that's my biggest problem with this movie, is that there are so many moments like that are just really silly, and you're just kind of wondering why. That I can't really enjoy every single part of this movie. I can't enjoy Nova's character and the human relationship that they're trying to establish, because Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War for Planet of the Apes and even Rise to the Planet of the Apes, all of them have very clear messages about humans, about what we're doing to the world. And this movie is just a jumbled mess. It's trying to do way too much. It doesn't get any of the messages clearly across the board. Whereas again, what makes those last three movies so good for me is that not only are they action-packed, but they are so thematically rich and clear and driven narratives, and this movie simply doesn't live up to that. And the ending for how they actually defeat Proximus Caesar is really silly as well. But I don't really have anything else to add, so let me know what you thought of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes down in the comments below. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this. Make sure to follow me over on Letterboxd, where I gave this a 3 out of 5 down in the description below. Make sure to follow us over on Twitter as well, and we will see you in the next movie review.